Hello, welcome all. It's nice to see so many wonderful familiar faces. Big welcome to Amy Leonardi and Dr. Sonia Tellier from Falmouth Public Schools in Massachusetts. We're so excited to hear from them. They've been doing a lot of really wonderful work advocating for outdoor learning and actually putting it into practice. Amy Leonardi received her bachelor's in science and elementary education and English from Bridgewater State University with a certification in special education. After teaching elementary education for 4 years, she switched gears to the accounting industry where she has remained for the last 14 years. She is the firm administrator for Gary Delapasta's PA in Falmouth, Massachusetts. Additionally, after seeing a need for an online support network for parents and families, she started the Cape Cod Moms in 2011. As an active member of the community, she is currently the vice president of the Rotary Club of Falmouth and the youth committee co-chair for over 6 years. She also served as treasurer for several years, and she lives in Falmouth with her husband and 2 children who both attend Falmouth Public Schools. And Dr. Sonia Tellier earned her BA in English along with a minor in secondary education in 2001 from Bridgewater State University, while concurrently earning certification to teach English at the high school level. She is the assistant superintendent of Falmouth Public Schools, but began teaching at Falmouth High School later that year in September 2001. She then entered her master's in educational leadership in 2005 from Bridgewater State University and her doctorate of educational leadership with a concentration in social justice in 2018 from Boston College. During this time span, Sonia served as the assistant principal of academic programs at Falmouth High School, as well as assistant superintendent and director of teaching and learning at the district level. She has served on a number of district committees and welcomes community partners and innovative thinking as she supports educators in their professional learning in the service of students. She also lives in a neighboring community with her husband, 2 children, and 2 dogs. So without further ado, welcome Sonia and Amy. Thank you so much for all the work you're doing. We're excited to hear from you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lauren and Sharon. It's an honor and a privilege for us to be here today. And I just kind of want to say that we had started following the Green Schoolyard project early on after the pandemic. And I found so much useful information from attending these sessions and working with them, looking at their resources and everything like that. So thank you for all that you all are doing, because that's how that collaboration happens and that inspiration. So we wouldn't even be where we are today without all of you. I would have gotten a little stuck, I think. Let's start our presentation. I'll do a little screen share here. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, we're with the Falmouth Public Schools, and I am actually the lead parent and committee chair of the Falmouth Outdoor Learning Project, which is a committee of the Rotary Club of Cape Cod. And we work in partnership with Dr. Tellier and the Falmouth Public Schools, among others, for this. And like I said, we've learned a lot in the past year. So a little bit about our community for those who don't know. Most people know Cape Cod traditionally as a summertime vacation destination. That's how they think of us. We are a coastal community, southeastern New England. Our year-round population is just under 31,000 people, but our summer population is, I believe it's over 100,000, Sonia, is that correct?
Yeah, I think we're right around 120,000 when we fill all of our hospitality venues and rental properties.
Yeah, bursting at the seams. We have the climate. Traditionally, people think we get a lot of snow. It's not the Cape Cod that I grew up with. Having grown up here, we had a lot of snow. It's not that anymore. Obviously, that's somewhat due to, or mostly due to, climate change. We have warm, humid summers. It's very wet. When we talk about the snowiest month being February, it's also windy. We get more wind and wetness than anything. And it's a very coastal climate around here. So it benefits us in some ways, which is really good because we have a lot of science opportunities at our fingertips. We have a lot of small ponds, creeks, inlets. We're surrounded by these pines and oaks, rocky beach fronts. We have some beaches that are very sandy on one side and the rest that are all rocky. What's unique about our community is we actually have over 2,500 acres of permanently protected conservation land within our community, which is huge. The 300 committee, which we'll talk a little bit about, really stepped up years ago to help protect this community and the conservation that needed to be done. It includes trails, woodlands, beaches, habitats, riverfronts, salt marsh, and a lot of it's in land trust protection. But we also have a very diverse, tight-knit local population and when I say diverse, it's a lot of different industries here, all spectrums. And I'm going to let Dr. Tellier share a little bit about the public schools and what we're made up of.
Thank you. And as Amy shared, we both grew up here, went to school in this area, and have committed our service and have brought our families to the Falmouth Public Schools. And along our journey, we've seen significant change. Our district has 7 schools, 4 of which are K-4, 1 5-6, 1 7-8 traditional junior high school, and 1 9 through 12 high school setting. So our students do go through a number of transitions, but what's particularly unique is the point that Amy made earlier. They each have a pretty significant, either a portion of land through the 300 community that's directly adjacent or adjoining to the property, or they're a very short walk away from either a cranberry bog, one of the farms, or the coastline, or one of our beaches. So it's pretty broad in the range of opportunities we have to situate learning outside. Our enrollment is holding steady at about 3,000 students. We've seen some fluctuation as our community does shift to be slightly more oriented towards retirement communities. But our district continues to thrive, and it's because of the commitment we've made to our families and our students. And we really want our students to find themselves in our community beyond schooling. And that's one of the priorities in our outdoor learning, is helping them find ways not just to learn and be outside, but also to find themselves and help shape their identity over time. As we look at our community, one of the things that's really been particularly impactful for us in understanding our diversity and the range of students we support. About 20 years ago, when I started in the district, we had 1 ESL, or English as a second language, teacher, and the number of L, or English learning students, we could really count on one hand. We're now approaching the 200 mark in terms of the number of English learners that we enroll as a district, really growing an entire department to support those students. But then, also looking at, we have a hospital in our town. Many know Falmouth because of the Village of Woods Hole. We have some renowned research and science institutions, the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, Marine Biological Lab. And so we see this range and this growing diversity across our community, and we want to see our schools as a microcosm in how we can help prepare our community and prepare our students for what comes next in the future, and model the best practices along the way. And as Amy said, we have some just natural landscape around us, but we also, through continued partnership, have created 2 vernal pools that are learning labs. One is at our junior high and one's at our high school. So continuing to grow and be aware of what our students need to increase their time outdoors and deepen their learning.
Thanks, Sonia. So what Sonia and I are going to take you through today really quick is the why, the how, the who, the where, and what's next for us. And just Reader's Digest version, how this initially came about was when our superintendent, right when the pandemic first happened, she put together a committee of a lot of people. It was administrators, teachers, parents, the health department, or a pediatrician. I mean, everybody could be involved. And right away, she set about doing the work to prepare for the fall. how are we going to come back when this was over? How long was this going to last? What were the mitigation strategies? And it was through that collaboration effort and we kept hearing it's safer outside, right? And even now, over a year later, we know you don't have to COVID test for close contacts if they've been outside, and we don't have to wear masks if we're outside. And so this became a no-brainer, really, is how do we be safe and go get back to school? Because we knew that couldn't last a long time. We know from the CDC and WHO studies from back in the early 2010s with other pandemics that these were things that we were going to have to answer. We were going to have to adjust how we were doing things. So I look at it as really the pandemic opened a window of opportunity. And while our teachers were really hardworking, making the Google Classrooms and they did such a great job, we wanted to kind of complement that and offer, how do we get outside, not just for breaks, but more for science, and where's the balance for that, really? Because there has to be some type of balance, because they both bring a lot of great things to the table. So obviously, a lot of you have probably heard the why of outdoor learning. You know, the recent statistics that they're sharing with us. We know obesity has increased with children during the pandemic. I'm coaching 5th through 7th grade boys soccer. I can tell you these poor boys can't run for 45 minutes. I can't run for 45 minutes, but I'm an adult. They're 10 and 11 years old. They should be able to run for 45 minutes. So you can see the physical aerobic shape and everything like that. We also know that it's, decreased exposure for COVID, among other things like colds and flus and everything like that, because you're outside, there's more room. It boosts your immune system, it reduces myopia, and even more important is the mental health aspect, right? And if you remember early on, it was kids are, they can get through this. There won't be too many factors that are going to affect us later, but we know now mental health was struggling, right? Because the increased ER visits for children dramatically increased. We saw increased anxiety and depression among children. So being outside, we know will decrease anxiety and depression, and we know that it lowers inflammation, stress, and cortisol. A lot of this also, I think back to Sharon's work she's been doing for the past 2 decades. We've known this for a long time, right? So it's just, again, the pandemic kind of opened this window of opportunity where everybody could kind of get on the bandwagon. We also know that academically being outside improves short-term memory, increases their focus and overall performance. And we shared a little quote from Ethan, who's actually my son, and people thought it would be hard for them to be outside. I remember that when the reporter asked him, and they thought it would be distracting to be outside looking at everything, but actually the sensory input from being outside in that fresh air, they're calmer, they're more focused because they're getting that sensory input naturally then. So that was a really important thing when you're presenting and you're trying to do this in your school. So what we did, the how of it, we obtained school and community buy-in right away. We did the research, we looked for volunteers, identified community partners. I can't stress that enough. The community partners and the volunteers are really, I think, what's crucial to the overall success of implementing this. And luckily for us, Dr. Tellier and Dr. Jordan, they're very supportive. They were like, all right, let's do it. It wasn't even a hesitation. There wasn't even a doubt. Let's do it. And they've been so supportive about the whole thing, as has our school committee and community. We identified funding opportunities through those community partners and other nonprofits. One of the main 3 nonprofits that we partnered with that I think are crucial is Rotary clubs, which are all over the world. A lot of you probably have them in your towns or in nearby. They operate as 501c3s. They are an international organization, and a lot of their areas of focus, including environmental and children's health and literacy, it all falls into their purview. So I really recommend trying to partner with a Rotary club too. We also partnered with our local Falmouth Volunteers in Public Schools, which is a huge organization that's been, Sonia, how long have they been in existence?
They're about to celebrate their 40th birthday.
40th birthday. And these are hundreds of volunteers throughout the community, the retirees, active business owners, and they all give back in some way. So again, taking that model, everybody has something to give. And that's, we're kind of tapping into that. And then we also partnered with 300 Committee and some of the others we're going to talk about today. The other thing that we did was we started to identify perceived obstacles. So our committee, after we kind of done some infrastructure work, we surveyed the teachers and we kind of identified where they were at, what knowledge they had, and what were the perceived obstacles in the way. And then our committee, mainly made up of parents and teachers, went to work trying to alleviate those perceived obstacles, things like weather, how to plan, we need training on it. And so we've actually recently just completed our second round of training with Sharon and Lauren from Green Schoolyards, which was wonderful. And we're going to be looking at other things. And then we're also going to be reinforcing some of the stuff that we've done, highlighting successes that teachers have, sharing those lessons, letting them work collaboratively, recognizing and supporting innovation that they see. We're also going to work on problem solving, how we work through the scheduling of the spaces now that they're there. So I actually got this from another Green Schoolyard project, and I liked it so much I had to do something similar, but how we did it, just summing up, just like the waggle dance with the bees, and the bee finds a source, they're communicating critical information. So you're doing the same type of thing in your own community. Get the blessing of the superintendent and form yourself a strong community within the community made up of the teachers, the administrators, the parents, the business owners, everyone. Everybody is a stakeholder. And Sonia's heard me say that a million times, but we are. It doesn't matter whether you have kids or don't, you are a stakeholder, because we all get the payout down the line. And that's what our mantra is. And so it's just working through these steps so that everyone knows that they are invested in that. Sonia, do you want to talk about the district level support?
Sure. So as Amy's given the nod to, we couldn't have gotten started on this journey without Superintendent Dorr giving us the green light to go ahead. And along with that came a pretty significant focus on how we prioritize funding within our district, and then how we too can help provide support and advocacy with any grant applications that may be written by the Outdoor Learning Project or other stakeholders. Along the way, we have also looked at the complementary design of our partnerships across our community. And to help us steward our work forward, we have been able to secure a learning partnerships specialist. So we have a dedicated colleague whose role is just to focus on our partnerships and making sure that things connect and questions are answered quickly. Very fortunate that she also comes with a research focus in building and sustaining partnerships in public school settings. So definitely hit the ground running in her role. Tracking our progress, we are very data oriented, and I know Amy has spoken to that, whether it's just collecting specific hours and how things are used, how they're maintained, what lessons are taught, but then beyond that, using that to do a continued needs assessment. So it becomes an ongoing loop informing our progress and the decision making we do. But all of this is anchored in our district's focus and emphasis on equity. And so one of the things that became really important, and Amy's helped us to really take this focus and this action to scale, is if it's appropriate for one school, right? It's appropriate for all schools. If we're bringing it to 1 3rd grade, we need to bring it to scale across all 3rd grades. And that's part of the equity mindset that's at play and how we've been developing the partnership and making the decisions. And then looking, at overall enrollment and the nature of certain grades over other grades, which helps make decisions, right, about which resources, how many tents are installed, how many sail shades are installed, what are we doing to connect with trails and learning areas. And along the way, just continuing to cultivate the partnership. And in the work that we're doing in building the partnerships, I think we're also creating greater transparency in our curriculum and helping not just situate learning in the community and on our school campuses, but also bringing more and more businesses and more of our citizens in to help us, and all the while informing our curricular alignment and beginning to move away in some cases from whole programs, and following programs with fidelity and beginning to take sections, one piece at a time, and maybe dismantle a planned unit in a program and replace it with a menu of options, several of which would be situated outside, and allowing, if we need to be concerned about weather or other factors, allowing us to have flexibility and flex that skill set a bit as we go.
Thanks, Sonia. Real briefly, just some critical items to consider as you're doing this are different ways that we broke down our committee, it's putting people to work where they're most comfortable. So just because someone thinks, hey, I can't sit there and help put up sun sails, but I might be able to help with marketing. I can go take pictures. I could help sponsor lunch for the volunteers. I can write a couple thank yous every day for the donations, website design, different things. I can help with grant review. So it was really just investing in the volunteers and nurturing what they could possibly do and putting them where they belong. One of the crucial elements that we found was shelters, especially in the New England region. You need a little bit of shelter. We looked at several different types, and we elected to go with a wide variety of all these things, except for the American. I think we might have a couple American tents left still at the high school. But however, the Weatherport tents can withstand like 120-mile-per-hour winds and a 30-pound per square foot snow load. Woohoo! And actually they're semi-permanent, and you break down the cost over 20 years, which is how long they're supposed to last. Again, it was like a no-brainer for us. So to complement those, every school has at least 1 to 2 of these. We're in the process of putting up the final 3, which is exciting. Other schools already had some things set up, like a pagoda. We increased sun sail usage in courtyards. We used tree stumps, just working with the DPW to put tree stumps under shades of trees and being conscious of where that placement was, which was really, really important for us. The who, again, everybody is a stakeholder. Everybody can be invested in this, from the business owners to historical nonprofits. We're very blessed. We have the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe that is a huge part of our community, and they are in partnership with us on another level as well, but they are helping with it. And again, the science community, Dr. Tellier mentioned the WHOI and MBL, and what's the climate change one? Sonia?
The
Yes.
Woodwell Climate Research Center.
So we're very blessed with our access to these things and being able to bring people in. So even bringing them in as guest lecturers to support and enrich our curriculum. And again, partnering with different 501c3s allows for tax deductible donations and grants. And again, the more you're involving, the more resources you have and connections.
And Amy, I just want to add on. So Amy talked about the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. We also just signed a land acknowledgement, which will begin to shape our thinking yet on another level about how we go outside. But I think the biggest piece, as you're listening to Amy talk about all of our stakeholders, is that it's changed our way of thinking, where we used to design programs and then say, geez, how can we go outside a couple of times, to how can we design a program and maybe we'll go inside once in a while, or maybe we'll get forced in by the weather. Although, as Amy said, it tends to be more wind than anything that forces us inside. But it's also given us a very different dynamic for how we look at instructional technology. We have a grant through Team Mobile. We have over 200 pocket-sized mobile hotspots, and our kids are all one-to-one. Certain grades are iPads and certain grades are Chromebooks, and every teacher has a laptop, not to mention all of the equipment we have to measure, wind and water and trees, and committing ourselves to a more sustainable practice of data collection over time that every kid can be part of. So as Amy's talking about stakeholders, just as she's talking about the committee, and every member of the committee has a role, we're trying to be really thoughtful and intentional in looking at how every stakeholder also has a role in helping us continue to move outside. Thanks, Amy.
Thanks. Like I said, the volunteers are crucial. We have everything. The kids are even involved. We've had high schoolers helping us, to the elementary kids helping make sit-upons for cushions on top of the log seating. So it's all hands in on all of this, and nobody complain. People show up with the best attitudes, which is wonderful. Where we are today, to date, we've raised over $100,000. That's just in monetary donations. It doesn't even count the donations we've asked for school supplies for our teachers. They give us wish lists, and we get the community. We'll just be like, okay, here's 100 of these clipboards for you, for the kids to go outside. So I don't even include that in that piece. We've had over 1,800 volunteer hours and counting, with over 100 regular committed volunteers and over 17 articles. So this community really, again, they're rallying around this type of goal. For us, what's next? We're going to continue to work on teacher training and providing professional development with our community partners, and increasing those connections with Dr. Tellier and Dr. Vendetti, our learning partner specialists. We want to recognize those early adopters, encourage them, even if they're not, hugely knowledgeable, but we want to honor, hey, you're trying this. This is great. You can do this. Wow, what a great job. And studying our data to continue to overcome those perceived obstacles. And then we want to collaborate with other schools across the region and the nation and globally, because there's so many ideas out there for things you can do. Just a couple parting thoughts, and I shared a little thank you notes that we received yesterday from our elementary kids. Like I said, the pandemic's opened a window of opportunity here. And so, we know depression's rising, we know obesity is rising, we know there's a 60% increase in screen time usage among children, which is understandable after the pandemic, but we know those things have some negative effects as well. And there's also been this increase in social anxiety and issues among peers. I saw a great quote today, a friend shared, the last year of school for a fifth grader, my son, the last normal year of school he had was second grade. So you think about that, and that loss of those social skills, which are so important, it really does affect them long term. And how do we navigate that? And being outside and creating those social, hands-on, collaborative experiences can help alleviate that. And it's not a single or community issue. This is all of us. We are all invested in this. We're going to have better critical thinkers by doing this type of thing, like what Sharon and Nancy and all of you are supporting. We all have better stewards of the planet and of humanity for the future. Our kids see what we're doing. They see us coming together for a common goal. They're going to mirror that. We're leading them so that they will then continue to lead for our future. Then we get the payout someday, right? That's what we're investing is the ultimate long-term payout. And that's what our world needs. I mean, look at it. So the time's now. We got to use that pandemic window while we still can, and continue to invest in our schools and being leaders in innovation and education. So, and then I just shared our contact information for all of you, but I know they're going to share that as well.
Thank you so much, Amy and Sonia, and we'll drop your contact information in the chat one more time. Thank you again. We'll take a few moments to answer some questions that folks have from the chat. Couple questions that popped up from Scott. Have you seen a difference in student behavior and your instructional time? I'm assuming the before and after the outdoor implementation.
So you want to take that one?
So it's hard to isolate one variable. Amy is talking about the pandemic window, and I think in many cases for us, looking beyond the circumstances in which we find ourselves, we sort of refer to it as the accelerant of our work. There were a number of initiatives that needed to be scaled. So yes, we're seeing changes, in large part, as Amy talked about when she framed the why, part of it is having our students outside and being in tune, right? The fresh air, being in tune with nature. But parallel to that, because of the commitment we've made and really understanding and going through the process of evaluating whether or not we're actually achieving our equity goals, We are also implementing shifts in our student discipline philosophy and practice and moving to a more restorative approach. So the two pieces together, and that's why I say it's hard to isolate one variable, but we are certainly seeing a shift, and we're certainly seeing lower incidences of discipline, and part of it, I think, having access to the outside, having, when you were inside, a more rigid structure because of the safety protocols. And then with our restorative lens, that blend of where we want to be as we move forward. So we're definitely seeing changes. And this is a contributor, but it's part of a holistic approach in how we're shaping our district.
I can
Wonderful. Go ahead, Amy.
I was just going to add, I could speak to my son personally had a hard time when it went virtual right in the beginning. It was very frustrating. So when we were back in school and he was having more access to the outdoors, we saw a decrease in that frustration level. So I could tell you from a parent's point of view, it was definitely a noticeable difference in behaviors.
Well, speaking of structure, Nancy from Green Schoolyards is wondering about your committee structure and the list of tasks that each took on.
So we had a really small group in the beginning, there was such a wide group of volunteers, but there was a smaller group of regular attendees, some of whom are actually on the call, but we were meeting weekly via Zoom and just kind of developing our structure. And the most important thing was we immediately, people took on what they felt close to. So we have one woman who's really great with media, and she was like, I've got the media. I will get out press releases. I will draft them. You will review them. We had other parents, we set them up as liaisons. So there was a point of communication from our committee to each and every school that would work with a school principal and a school teacher, so that we were getting feedback from what those schools needed, because every space in school is unique, right? And then we had other people that would take on special projects. We had Mom Laurel Smith, who we needed yoga mats. So she took on the project of making sure cutting up the yoga mats and coordinating the donations of them and how to purchase them for the excess. So everybody kind of did their part, and we're now meeting bi-weekly. We don't have to meet weekly anymore, but our committee has grown to now we have on teachers that are contributing and giving us feedback as well in our bi-weekly meetings, which is really important. But it's just, again, finding what they're good at and who's willing to take something on. We also have someone who's coordinating just with 300 committee. And of course, with the district hiring the learning partner specialist, that took some stuff off of our plate and allowed for communication directly with the district. We were already doing that, but it kind of gives this person, this is their niche now, which makes it a lot easier for our committee.
Wonderful. So I wanted to ask the question, make sure that Sharon's question was addressed. This is for Sonia Tellier. Can you tell us a little more about the district-wide systems needing to be scaled? And Sharon, do you want to follow up with your other question?
Let's just take that one first. I think if there's you went on to talk about some of it, so maybe you already covered it, but I was just, when you said we had to scale some district systems before we went outside, I was like, ooh, what were they? How did that work?
Yeah, we had, thought about our instructional technology, for example, right? And then looking at if we had some groups going outside and able to participate in more of a citizen science, right? In the data collection, and some were going outside and their experience was very different because they weren't prepared with that. We were really looking at scaling those practices across grade levels in particular, and then looking at a vertical approach over time, but recognizing, that the curriculum is consistent across grade levels up to grade 8, right? Students start to diversify their enrollments a bit in the upper grades, and we look at courses individually. So that would be one. I think, we had some places that had, the vernal pools or had some outdoor seating. They had places that students could just go right to and work, and others were improvising, and that's the infrastructure piece I think Amy talked to first. So really just looking at having the capacity that when we said it was time for everyone, we really want you all outside, and we really, don't want to have to hold any one group back because someone's using the limited resources, being able to do that. So that just became part of the priority thinking.
We'll do one more question before we move into breakout groups. We want to have enough time for you all to meet with each other. And they're sort of related. One from Karen about what works in terms of wet, cold weather and ventilation. And then the other question is from Jennifer asking about an app that teachers can sign up to rotate shared spaces outside. So either one of those to answer would be great. And if you have more questions, you have Amy and Sonia's emails there in the chat.
So on the ventilation, so I'm always reminded of the quote, there's no such thing as bad weather, there's just bad clothing choices, right? You can't go outside in the torrential downpour, but you can go outside in a rain slicker with some light rain. Again, like I said, we're kind of blessed here with, for the most part, our climate's pretty okay to go out almost year round. I think there was only a couple days that might have been too cold if you go by the Iowa standards with the wind and the temperature. So all our tents and spaces, they're open air. We could have elected to put windows on them or doors on them, which is still a potential possibility, but we elected not to because of the airflow. And we also wanted to involve it within the curriculum. So a lot of our tents now are starting off point for this curriculum project we're working on with the 300 committee, where they will interact with plants and animals on this nature walk at the conservation land. That'll be the starting off point. With the apps, I don't know if we're using an app. The principals have developed their own Google calendar schedules. You saw a little bit of an example from a letter. So a lot of the schools have multiple spots and the teachers can sign up. So the one example you saw from Mullen is, I think there's spots for every single teacher could go out if they wanted to every single day. There's enough space for that. So, and I know we're working on some more structuring support for that as well, and tracking it, and also getting the feedback from the kids and the teachers, what they think works.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And again, if you have more questions for them, you can email them.
So and thank you so much for a wonderful presentation and for sharing your work with us. It's really amazing.
Yes, thank you for your inspiration, and a heads up to everyone that we have a case study. Thank you so much to both for your contributions to that. That will be ready very soon and will be posted on the Green Schoolyards America website under the case study chapter.